Welcome to The Brew, presented by Free Logic Media. Today, I'm joined by the co-founder of our business, and we're going to go into various topics talking about academia, study abroad, and all that good stuff. So, Nikhil?
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. So we're going to get started talking first about study abroad. So study abroad, both of us have done study abroad, and I think study abroad is by far the most crucial thing everybody should do in their undergrad experience, if they can, of course, do it, as well as if they're a business student. I think the value really comes from business, but any kind of discipline, you should do a study abroad.
Yeah. Well, actually, I'm going to say this. I feel like a lot of people go and study abroad because they just want to go on vacation. And I don't want to throw anyone on the bus. Do what you want, but the value in it, especially being a UC student, you end up paying double tuition, right? So, if you're going to study abroad, I highly recommend it too. If you're going to study abroad, make sure it's for academic purposes and actually gaining a global point of view. Yeah,
100%. Yeah, that kind of goes back into what you said. A lot of people look at it as this is vacation time, this is fun.
Yeah.
Trust me, if you want to do vacation time, just do it on a vacation time.
And it's cheaper.
It's cheaper, and then you don't have to go to classes. You can actually enjoy your time there. But the experience that I personally got, and I know as well you got from your study abroad, completely changed your perspective on everything.
Yeah.
So we're going to deep dive first into the study abroad of Hong Kong. So both of us got to study abroad in Hong Kong, and I kind of want to jump in first about what it's like to actually study abroad, because it sounds so glamorous, but there's a shock factor that I don't think a lot of people realize. So for me personally, I've never been in Asia in my life before I did this study abroad, and it didn't hit me until I actually got onto that plane. The second I got onto that plane, I realized, holy crap, I'm going on a 16-hour flight to Hong Kong. Never been to Asia in my life.
Yeah.
I don't know one person there. I'm not studying abroad from anybody from UCR or anybody I even know in general. I have no idea what to expect. And it just shocked me. What experience did you have preparing to go to Hong Kong?
Yeah, kind of the same, but the thing for me, it's not really, I can't really draw as many parallels, but I feel like a lot of people I met who studied abroad had the same as you. So for me, I grew up in Irvine, California. It's very a lot of Asian people. Culture is all around, everywhere. All of my friends, I learned what boba was in high school, right?
Yeah.
Most people that I know here didn't learn about it until college. I think so. So I think going into Hong Kong, I wasn't as scared about the culture shock. Yep. And honestly, there hardly was any culture shock for me. But all the friends I made, there were a lot of people studying abroad at the same time as me. They were just I can't stand the food. The people are so rude. And it's okay, cool. Relax.
Yeah. No, it's definitely an interesting perspective. You're originally from India, so you have traveled to Asia before. You've gone to India before.
Yeah, I don't even know how many times. It's 6-7 times. It's not that many times for 22 years of life, but I knew somewhat what to expect, and Hong Kong blew my expectations in many ways based off of what I know of Asia. It was very clean, very organized, whereas India is, for the most part, not.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was actually great. From the beginning, I was I love this place, and I felt very comfortable.
That's good.
Yeah.
For me, it was kind of an interesting experience when I actually got to Hong Kong. So of course, I was the nerves hit me when I was on the plane. I was oh crap, I'm going to a new country, never been here before. But it got real when I actually got out into the airport, because my student housing was technically a Buddhist monastery that they turned into student housing. So it didn't have an actual address. So the struggle with that was, once you get out of the airport, when you go get a taxi, right, you tell the person this is where I'm going, and then they tell the taxi driver. Well, in my situation, the taxi driver spoke no English. So the guy told him in Chinese, and I'm this is gonna be a trip. So got into the taxi cab, and he drove me to an address that was listed on it. That address was just a university address. It wasn't the Buddhist monastery address.
Right.
So we go there and we ask, all right, so where's this building? They're oh, it's up the street. Go down the street and then go up the driveway.
Right.
So of course the taxi driver did that. Once we go up the street, the house we turn up on has a Lamborghini up front, huge house. Find out it's the associate dean's house or something like that. Magnificent house. I'm oh, I'm staying here. This is gonna be awesome. Obviously, we get there. The security comes to the door and is okay, you guys are wrong place. I asked him what is the place, and he's oh, it's down the street. So we go there. We go up and we go into the building. At the building, nobody was there for check-in. Absolutely zero people. Like I said, it was just an old Buddhist monastery. People were still on their break from winter break, nobody was there. And I called my dad. I was I don't know where I am. I don't know if this is the right place. I just have my suitcase, and I hope this is the right thing. And I sat there for 2 hours until somebody came. Then I asked like, oh, is this the building? And they're like, yes. So that was my introduction to Hong Kong. So that's why for me it was kind of not necessarily a culture shock, but it was new because I had to figure that out by myself. And this was the first day. Already the first day I was like, oh, this is going to be an experience of a lifetime.
Yeah, I mean, although there was no culture shock or anything like you had from the very beginning, I did have a somewhat similar experience. I mean, actually, what time did you land? What time did your flight land?
It was in the morning. So I got there about 10 a.m.
Okay, so it wasn't as scary. I mean, yeah, so like for me, I think I had a pretty wild experience too. I think, so I just ended my internship like 3-4 days right before like I had to fly out. So wasn't really thinking about the study abroad, and I wasn't like, I didn't have the mental capacity to think about it. So as soon as I sat on the plane, it all like just hit me like a truck, and I probably almost started tearing up and stuff. It was wild, like just all my emotions. I mean, the first thing was like literally the night before I asked out the girl who's not my girlfriend. So yeah, that was great. And then like I've been to India before, but never alone. Yeah. So there was that. Like I always had the comfort of my family, and I was younger too when I went to India. So you know, I never really had to figure stuff out on my own. But I guess one thing keeping me confident was that like most people are supposed to have spoken English. I mean, although that's the thing in India, but it's just like, I'm Indian. People know I'm Indian. And people in India know that I'm Indian who is not from India. you know what I mean? Like, so I can't really like survive there as easily as I can in any other country, to be honest. Or I don't know. Maybe I can. But anyway, yeah. So hit me on the plane. As soon as I landed, I realized it was raining outside. I'm like, okay, great. I brought an umbrella because it was like monsoon season or whatever.
It's Hong Kong.
Yeah. It was nighttime, probably like 9 p.m., 10 p.m. But I was like, it's fine. Like there's taxis and stuff. So I get in the taxi. Luckily, I had an English-speaking taxi driver. He knew where to go. But then it got more emotional then because it's like we're driving down Lantau Island, like on the going up to the bridge, right? It's pretty like empty, but then there's some like nice ass like looking buildings like on the side. But it's raining, and then like all of a sudden I hear Chris Martin's voice, and I'm like, wait, is that Coldplay? It was either Yellow or Fix You by Coldplay, and like that threw me back to like middle school days. Like, I'm so emotional right now, you know, that kind of thing. So that was fun. And then got to the university, and yeah, so just like you, the guy didn't know where to go, but like we got directions, we end up there, but there's no clear marking of which building it is. So finally, like I asked like a student who was like walking by, and like, hey, where do I go? He's like, oh, you can just like get off here or something, right? But again, there's no clear indication. There's like a parking lot like in the back of the building. So he took me there, and then I see a door. I'm trying to get in, but I can't get in. And I'm like, okay, great. It's raining. The door's locked. What do I do? So I go around to the other side of the building. The huge set of stairs. Decide to leave my suitcase on the floor. And I'm just like, okay, I just really hope nobody takes this right now. Yeah. Go up, and I'm like lost as hell. And then finally I see a guy, and it's like pretty late at night, so I was like, thank you for being here, and like, hey, where do I go? And so he took me inside, helped me with my bags, and then yeah, so by the time I got into my apartment, my dorm, I was sweating, I was drenched in rain, I was exhausted, barely had any sleep, and then yeah, my roommate wasn't there, but all of his friends' stuff was like on my side of the room, so I was like freaking out, and like my light wasn't turning on at first. It was hot as hell, and then I couldn't get onto the Wi-Fi. And then finally at the end of the night, I'm trying to sleep and I can't sleep. So it was just like the first introduction to like studying abroad. I'm just like, fuck, like, yeah, what am I doing?
Yeah, no, I think it's a lot of people think that when you go, everything's kind of planned out for you, everything's gonna be perfect. But the reality is, like, I knew what I was getting into. I've traveled by myself multiple times before I even went to Hong Kong, and even though I kind of had a game plan exactly what I wanted to do, things just do not go exactly as you expect. Yeah. So it's kind of important, I think, anybody who does want to study abroad, get some experience traveling either alone or like a small trip or something. Just understand that like things go wrong and have a contingency plan, or just understand, don't freak out. The last thing you want to do when things don't go your right way is freaking out. Because once you start freaking out, you don't think radically. Like you're going to do stupid stuff.
Yeah.
And your experience is going to kind of hurt from that because you're going to freak out and, just not going to have a good time.
Right, yeah.
But like within Hong Kong, so obviously we both went there for education purposes. So I went to CUHK and you went to
HKUST.
Yeah. So when it came to like obviously our introduction there and all that kind of stuff, but how was your experience with the university in general? Because obviously it's a study abroad. You were there for learning purposes, educational purposes. So how were like the classes there compared to the US? Because a lot of people don't understand like global education. Every country, their education system is very different.
Not gonna lie, like if I was there for, I was there for educational purposes, but obviously I was studying abroad. I wanted to travel.
Of
so
course,
like, I wasn't fully, I guess, involved in the sense that I would have been like a quarter earlier at home.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like I instantly noticed that like professors have so much more passion, are so much more involved in what they're teaching, so much more engaged, know how to engage the class, know how to walk around the classroom. Like that's a big thing. Just walking from left to right, like that makes a big difference because it's like showing how they're involved and they want you to pay attention.
Yep.
Very engaging classes. Like one of my marketing classes, it was I can't remember the name, but it was kind of like a business simulation thing, more tied towards marketing. So that was pretty legit. Digital marketing professor, he became a good connection of mine. He was American too, which was cool. So we were able to, I think his daughter goes to school in California, so we were able to like connect on that kind of sense and like we met up for coffee one day and like gave a good amount of advice for like our business, right? So that was a great connection to have. Another professor was like, he was also American, he was Harvard educated, so I mean I didn't necessarily enjoy that class, but it just goes to show like, wow, I'm being taught by a Harvard guy. That's legit. And then another guy, he was Indian, and I'm naming out like all their ethnicities because none of my professors are Chinese. So like the first one that I mentioned, he was Filipino. So one Filipino, 2 Americans, and an Indian guy. So he was very engaged as well, very smart, more entrepreneur minded. I wish I was more engaged in my classes so that I could have taken a lot more out of it. Also wish I took like a global business course, but I think other than, so the classes themselves are great, but the problem is like it's a very competitive environment. So luckily I was there to study abroad. I wasn't there necessarily for my grades because at this point like I've had internships and my grades were decent enough, good enough already, where it was like I wasn't too worried if they were going to go down a little bit. And the problem was that everyone else was stressed out of their minds, especially around midterms and final seasons, and it was just like scary, and like hearing about mental health issues and stuff like that. So this is like a contrast which I think needs to be addressed, but it also goes into Asian culture, which can't be easily fixed.
It's very deep rooted.
No,
but I definitely saw that. When you talk about the professors, that's actually pretty interesting because one of my professors was French, one of my professors was Japanese, very different backgrounds. Obviously, like the class I took in like Chinese transformation, like cultural classes, they were Chinese professors, but majority of my professors in the business school, they came from different backgrounds, and I think that was actually why I really liked the classes, because they gave a different lens on how business works in different countries. My favorite class that I took was integrated marketing communication. So we actually created an IMC strategy for a company, and we were working with IoT products. So it was very interesting because that was her background. She was a very successful business lady in Hong Kong itself, and she showed us the application side of what she does and then made us do the same plan. And I learned so much. I was only a second year when I did this study abroad, and because I wasn't able to take upper division business courses at UCR, so that's one reason why I decided to do this early, so I can kind of leapfrog and take classes before I was able to take them at UCR, and CUHK kind of gave me that opportunity, which I love. But going off of the competition wise, so it is very interesting because students there are very, very competitive, and I don't think they collaborate in group projects as much. They don't do group projects really there.
Dude, I was surprised by that. Like, I feel like, and sorry to cut you off, but like, I had a couple of group projects. I was surprised that I felt like as the study abroad student, I was taking more of the lead. And if I was not going on, a couple trips here and there, like we would have gotten good grades. But I mean, I was shocked. I was like, yo, these guys are smart people, but like they don't really care about this group project as much, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, that was for one of them. The other one was fantastic, but you know.
Yeah, it kind of goes along, but that goes really deep rooted into their culture as well. So
Yeah.
like their education system, a lot of people don't understand. It's made out of a straight bell curve. So X amount of people get an A, X amount of people get a B, X amount of C, and a D. So A, there's like, if there's a class of 30, max 6 people can get an A, and that's A and A minuses. The rest get split into B, C's, and D's, but that's nothing to do with the percentage. And that's what shocked me was I actually ended up getting a B in my marketing class, but I had a 94%.
Yeah, no, so yeah, one of my good friends who is from Hong Kong, he one of our last few conversations before I was about to leave, like we were just having a moment or something, and like it was like final season or whatever, and he's telling me, yeah, like last quarter, last semester or whatever, he had like a 94 or something, and he got a B minus. I was just like, I almost like threw my fork. I was just like, what? Like, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Like I guess I got, no, one of my classes did screw me over with the curve, but like everything else was like, I was
Pretty
luckily
even.
Okay.
Yeah.
One of them didn't have the curve, and that was with the American professor. Thank you, Professor 8.
Yeah, but I think that's actually a mixture, because the classes that I dominated, succeeded in was the classes that were analytical. Because one thing I noticed is that students, like local students, they're very, very good at memorization or repetition of classes. But the classes that were analytical, and the way that European and American education systems are somewhat surrounded around more, like reasoning and your own analysis, those are the classes that like mostly the Asian students were struggling with, while the international students were succeeding.
Yeah.
And we pretty much destroyed the curve, and those are the students that actually were doing worse, and the international students were getting the A's.
Yeah.
But it kind of shows that different education systems, when you go and do a study abroad, it's a shock to you, because you have to get involved with their education system, and you're there now. You can't be like, oh, in the US it's this. Like, no,
Yeah.
you're playing by their rules, and you have to understand that. And for
Right.
UC students, those grades count. So I had a lot of people there that their grades didn't matter. They were pass or fail.
Yeah, like most of them. And
Yeah.
when I told them, yeah, no, my grades count, they're like, I'm so sorry.
Exactly. But that's why that's why you pay double tuition, because we have to be a UC student at the same time.
Yeah.
It is kind of a tricky thing, but it was unfortunate, because it did take away from the other experience, which I want to talk about now, which is what the value really, I think, from study abroad is learning another culture,
Right.
and also meeting people from all around the world. And I just want to put this out there right from the start. When you study abroad, do not be with people that you hang out with every day. So if you're American, don't hang out with Americans every single day,
Right.
because it's missing the entire idea of culture immersion.
Yeah.
So I hung out with only people from different countries: Germany, Switzerland, people from Korea, locals.
Yeah.
I'll go back into like locals, because like my entire building, everybody was a local. Then it was me and another American.
Yeah.
I got the opportunity to actually play on my building's like soccer team, so I got really, really close to the guys, because I got to play soccer with them. They took me to like the way that they have dinners. They took me to like local restaurants, sit down, and how they talk. I was taking a Chinese class there, a Cantonese class, but they're also teaching me like Cantonese slang and how people like interact there. So I actually really started to understand like how Hong Kong culture really is. And but I think the very important thing is, when you study abroad, you're already in an uncomfortable situation, but take it one step further and make sure your friend groups are from different cultures, because that is what's actually going to give you that value of studying abroad.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, I would, so the way our program was designed, or I don't know if it was the design of the program, but like, I feel like most of the study abroad students were just kept together, and our class of study abroad students was like the biggest one ever for that school. I can't remember the number, but it was a lot. It was a few hundred. And so I didn't really become friends with too many local students. There's like a handful, and like I'm thankful for those relationships, but I do wish I was more, like involved with that culture, the Hong Kong culture. Although like I didn't really stick around with too many Americans. There was like a Canadian guy who hung out with a lot, and then a few people from Sweden. Actually, a lot of Swedish people.
In Ireland
there
as well, right?
Oh yeah, one of my best friends now. Yeah. I'm sorry, Camille. Love you, man. So one of my best friends from study abroad, Irish, and some German people too. So yeah, it was pretty awesome.
Yep. I mean, like the reason I really like it is because you see how they interact in different countries as well.
Yeah.
And especially Europeans travel a lot, because in Europe it's so easy to travel from country to country.
Right.
It's the same thing as here going state to state, but in Europe it's going to another country.
Right.
So they're kind of already immersed into that kind of transition into different cultures.
Yeah.
And in Hong Kong, I could really tell these cliques kind of built out. It's like all the Americans hung out together, all these Germans hung out together.
Yeah.
People like to go where it's comfortable, but I want to make sure my friend groups are as diverse as possible, because the experiences that I personally had traveling and all this kind of stuff, man, it was mind-blowing. Like, I had some crazy stories, which I'm not going to talk about right now, but they came from just because the people I hung out with were very interesting, and it put us into situations that like really taught me a lot about life and all that good stuff. But going back into learning a little bit about the local culture. So yeah, I think it's crucial. If you're studying abroad, something you're there for 4 months, learn the culture. Try at least take an effort to learn the language at the extent, and go to like street markets and all this kind of stuff. But I don't think you know Hong Kong until you go to Mr. Wong's. And those that, if you ever travel to Hong Kong or any of that kind of stuff, find this place called Mr. Wong's. It's a low-key spot, but it's fantastic. It's a all-you-can-eat buffet and all-you-can-drink for dirt cheap. Definitely not a company that makes a profit, but that's on them, to their extent of how they make a profit. But the thing with Mr. Wong's that I loved about it was that was the spot that I got to meet everybody. Because when I went to Mr. Wong's, I don't know if you exactly had the same experience, but whenever I went there, I went with a new group of people every single time. Like I had my like friend group that we always went there, but we always try to bring on like, oh, you want to come out, you want to go out, let's go LKF, like let's go to Mr. Wong's first. And that way I was able to meet like hundreds and hundreds of people from all over the world. And literally, because when you are eating and drinking, that's when you have conversations with people. That's when you feel comfortable with people. People feel comfortable with you, and you just make great friends.
I didn't have that many experiences at Mr. Wong's. There's a couple, and they were like definitely more low-key than your experiences, I'm sure. But yeah, I think a bunch of us, like maybe 20, 30, I don't know, a lot of us, study abroad students, like right before like everyone's about to go home, we all went to Mr. Wong's. And the place closed, and we're all like, I mean, a few drinks inside of us. Don't worry, Mom, not too many. Some good, questionably made food, but very good food.
It's very good.
Just a little suspicious, you know, when you go to the bathroom and you see the back, and you're just like, oh, that's not super clean. You know. But anyway, I'm alive. So yeah, the place closed, and we're all just like, next thing you know, like all of us are in a circle, just like right outside the place, and just playing some random games. I can't even remember what we were doing, but we were just playing random games, and Mr. Wong comes out and blasts off in his Mercedes, and like
that was probably like his 6th car.
I don't know if he was sober either, to be honest, but like that was fun, man. Like, it's just a good time. Like, honestly, I don't want to go too much into this, but like the public drinking makes a difference.
It does.
And
like, I mean, whether you are for drinking or not, it doesn't matter. Even if people, like, I had friends that came out with us who didn't drink at all.
Right.
And the whole purpose was it's an environment that people feel comfortable and want to talk. So I tried as hard as I could always to get locals to come out, because local students actually wanted to study all the time. And I realized that at least the culture that I've been raised in, American culture, as well as like Finnish culture, both of them, like, you have to have a mixture of work hard, but you have to play hard as well. You gotta go out and have fun, because that's how you kind of de-stress, have fun, all that kind of stuff. So that's where LKF comes in. So once again, if you go to Hong Kong, you better go to LKF. Those don't know, that's where all the bars and clubs are. But that's also where it's mostly just international people. Like, locals don't go there. It's like Guaylo City, that's what they call it. But
you know what's funny? Like, there's a beer called Guaylo, right?
Really?
You don't know that?
I didn't have that. Yeah.
Oh damn. No, yeah. So like, the other thing is the drinking age. So like on campus, they had a grocery store that sold beers. It was pretty dope.
I did too.
It's
a must.
Yeah. So they had this beer called Guaylo, and I'm like looking for IPAs and stuff, I guess, right? Because I was like tired of like the cheap, crappy like.
Tsingtao.
Exactly. Yeah. So I was like, okay, this is darker, stronger. I'm like, all right, I'm down. I get it. It's called Guaylo. I'm like, I don't know what that means. Whatever. And then like halfway into my study abroad, I'm like, oh, that's like. Means like what, like
white ghost.
It
means white ghost. It's just talking about white people.
It's just white people. I'm like,
foreigners. Yeah.
Oh, no wonder I picked it up. It's just like it was meant for me, even though I'm not white. But like, you know,
it's branded right to you. Well, the funny part was on the soccer team that I played on at the university at CUHK. That was my nickname. So
wait, what was it? Oh, Guelo.
yeah. So when I scored a goal, the entire
Guelo!
audience, they were all chanting it. It was great. And I didn't even take it as an insult. I took it as a compliment because it was funny. It was like immersed in the culture. Like that. I think that's like the one part also is just like don't think about like politics or any of that kind of stuff. Just have fun when you study abroad. Like immerse in their culture, let it be. You're only there for 4 months or whatever time frame you're there. Don't get so caught up in what they do and all that kind of stuff. You got to play by their rules. Have fun there and just meet as many people as possible. But I mean, Hong Kong also does it's not just Hong Kong, but whenever you study abroad, you also have to be very, very aware of like political stuff that is going on, because you have to be self-aware and not putting yourself in situations. So when I was there was riots in Mongkok, right, during Chinese New Year, and I was actually just about to get off of the MTR, and the police told us to get back on. And the next day my friend sends me an article, and it was like 104 police officers were hospitalized because people like throwing bricks and all that kind of stuff, and that was because the Chinese kind of tension in Hong Kong, which is obviously very evident right now. But I think it's just very important when you study abroad is like, yes, have fun,
be aware,
but be very aware. You're still in another country. Don't get so comfortable that you ignore your surroundings, because you don't want to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. And I was very close of being in the wrong place at the wrong time. Luckily I wasn't. But I think that's very important for people to realize that when you study abroad, don't be like, oh, this is party time and like I'm gonna do this and like I'm gonna go drink and I'm gonna drink so much that like I black out or something like that. You gotta be aware. Like you're still a student.
Stay woke.
Exactly.
Pretty much.
Stay woke. There you go. So going off of the conversation about just like cultural awareness, everything that's going on, and we talked about obviously the education system. Everything's kind of different when you study abroad. But like overall, from your experience, what is the biggest takeaways you would have from your study abroad?
Just be so this ties into like kind of what we were talking about earlier, but just be prepared and be ready to have a flexible mindset. Because I mean, like I was ready to be flexible, but me being ballsy enough to ask a girl out like the night before I left kind of affected the whole thing. As in like, you know, wish I could be home right now. At the same time, you and I were like really starting to take off our business. Like we're doing a lot of stuff. So it took away from my experience in that way. Like I don't want to, obviously like I'm glad that we were able to do that stuff, but at the same time, like I could have been flexible in other ways, such as like, so my school, here's the third point, do your research. So that all ties in together, because my school, which I didn't realize because I was stupid enough not to research, was all the way on one edge of the
island.
I almost called it a country, but it's not. All the way on one edge of Hong Kong. The main part of Hong Kong where I actually wanted to be was on the complete opposite end. So like it would take an hour and a half just to get to where all the main stuff was. And one of my main reasons for studying in Hong Kong was because I wanted to be in a financial hub. I wanted to be, and I've always wanted to be in a big city. Like I remember when I was in high school, like I really wanted to study at NYU. I mean, obviously I learned after going to New York that I wouldn't have survived there, but like I felt ready like last year, and it was a 4-month commitment, not 4 years. So yeah, just be ready, have a flexible mindset, and do your research. And you know, if things don't go the right way, just be more open to things. Like I've generally been a more closed-minded person. It's something that I'm working on. Like I could have gotten off of my ass, taken the bus, and explored the city on my own. And I did that a few times, but like, you know, there were a lot of days where I just didn't leave campus because, I mean, one, I was either working on stuff, or two, I was just too lazy to. And, you know, laziness is like another thing that a lot of people have, and that doesn't necessarily tie into studying abroad in general, but yeah, just putting those things together, like, would make for an optimal experience, I'd say. Okay. Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that. I think the biggest thing 100% is open mind, because you're, like I said, you're going into another country and all this kind of stuff. If you go into the closed mind, your experience is, you have a very false perspective on what you're going to get into. Yeah. You have to be with an open mind, and you have to be willing to understand other people's perspectives and let it go. Don't get caught up on anything. Right. Really, really, and I think by far the biggest thing is talk to locals. I urge anybody, if you go abroad, don't be comfortable and just talk to people that speak English. Talk to locals, travel, see places as much as possible. Traveling is very important. I mean, no, we didn't really go into detail about like all the travels we did outside of Hong Kong, right? But
travel to other places, see other cultures, because you're finally in that area, so might as well see other places around that area.
No, yeah, I think like traveling helped make up for like what I didn't let myself do in Hong Kong, right? Like, where did you go?
I only got a chance to go to Indonesia and Vietnam.
Right, and then I went to Philippines, Korea, Japan, and Thailand. So like, I think going to all those places gave me a lot more perspective. I think there was more, not really culture shock, but like a lot more of what I wasn't expecting than there was in Hong Kong. So for me, like the traveling aspect really opened up my mind a lot more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I agree with that, and I think the kind of last piece of advice I would have, I mean, you pretty much touched on it with like the laziness side, but you're there only for 4 months.
Right.
Make that 4 months count. Don't sit in and watch Netflix on your laptop or any of that kind of crap. Like literally go out every single day, make an experience of it, because you're not going to get to relive that again unless you physically move to that country, which most people never do.
Yeah.
So you're there, make the most of it, travel, meet people, and all that kind of good stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
But going off of that note, so obviously we both did a study abroad. I actually did another one, but we're not going to dive into that right now. But what I do want to talk about is obviously both of us did a study abroad and then we came back. And then our lens and our perspective on education system as a whole kind of changed. Mm-hmm. So I really want to talk about how academia and like your perspective on academia, especially in business school, because I have a very critical outlook on business school because of the difference between academia and the commercial value.
Right.
Commercial value of business is obviously you go out there and apply it, you go into a company, and especially companies nowadays, they expect you to have like 3-4 years of experience when you graduate, like which nobody does.
Yeah.
Compared to academia, it's talking about theory.
Yeah.
Theory is great, and that's great to create a foundation for business, but it's not how the real world works.
Right.
So kind of what is your perspective on business school in general?
So, I mean, interestingly enough, I recently started drafting up an article kind of going around the same thing, since like I'm walking tomorrow, like commencement ceremonies tomorrow, and I graduated like last quarter, so in March I've had two internships and I'm starting work in July next month. So like I've had a lot to think about. I'd say going to our school, UCR, ended up being a really great thing. I'd say like when I didn't really want to go to UCR, and I feel like a lot of people didn't, and unfortunately the school, I mean, it's getting better now, but it hasn't had the best reputation.
I mean, now it's completely swapped. Like in the time we've been here,
it's
a different perspective.
Climbed, and I'm so happy for that, because it's like, I think as you and I are graduating, you graduated, but you're doing your MBA now and you're going to graduate next year, and now that I'm graduating and our friends are graduating, it's like we can say that we're a part of this legacy. And like I still, I mean, I won't necessarily be in the area, but I still want to be like committed to helping the school grow and stuff, like with recruiting and things like that. Anyway, like kind of going off on a tangent, but back to the article. So like the way that I started setting up this article is that, you know, I bring light to some of the cons that I experienced, some of the pros that I experienced, and like essentially round it out into like my ideal college curriculum, right? So I think in general, our business school to an extent it was good, but there were a lot of things holding it back, holding students back and holding the growth of the entire school back. And I mean, I'm just going to take a look at my list right now. Basically, so I don't know, we can go like into like the cons and then the pros and then the final part.
I think the best way is first be very critical about it.
Yeah.
Because I mean, before we even go into the cons of even UCR's business school or other business schools, like every business school in the world has very, very specific flaws, and that goes back into what I said earlier, which is academia versus the commercial world. Right. Completely different.
Yeah. So I mean, like to broaden that out, I think, or I don't know if broaden is the right word, but like the business school, I feel like hasn't prepared me, you, or any of us enough for the real world. I think school in general, outside of classes, like through our networks and what we learn from each other through our own trial and error, is preparing us. But what I've gotten from my classes hasn't necessarily prepared me, and I learned that right away when I was interning last year. Like I felt kind of lost. I felt very lost. Whereas, I mean, maybe this is something for our school in general, that should be taken into account. But like I felt like other people were more prepared. But you know, that's through their own experiences. Maybe it was my own thing. Who knows? But yeah, so like to get into that, I'd say I'm just gonna go in order from like freshman year to like now. Okay, so like it started out with like open book courses or open book exams, online exams, especially for introductory courses. Like, come on, we're not learning anything. And I mean, luckily our business school is changing its structure, so it's going to be way more beneficial. Right now it's set up as a pre-business program where like first 2 years you're really not taking any business courses. You're taking a couple econ, you're taking like entomology,
dance 5,
dirty 30.
Yeah. Just random classes.
Yeah, exactly. But then 2 years, starting your third year, fourth year, like you start taking your business courses. But it's like by that time you kind of need to start figuring out what you have to do.
Yeah, in the business world.
Yeah, and like if you have to wait till your third year of school to do that, then you know you're really holding students back.
Yep.
So like luckily the school is like changing its structure and like it won't be like that anymore. But yeah, so like a lot of these open book, open exam or online exams were like introductory courses, some that didn't really matter, but it really, I guess in a way, sways students to not study and influences them to not really learn much out of it. I mean, for example, like it wasn't an introductory class, but like, didn't you say that in one of your open book courses, which is supposed to be easy, it ended up being your worst grade versus like the much harder classes because it's like you didn't really learn much.
Yeah, my biggest thing is, and it's just how I work as a person, is the harder it is, the more time I put into it, and the better I am at it. The easier it is, I just kind of put it aside. It's not a priority, and I'm just gonna be like, this is easy, and I kind of wave it off. Yeah. Unfortunately, like, yeah, the class was super easy. I'm terrible at open book exams because an open book exam, the whole point of that is you're supposed to find the answers in the book, which doesn't teach you anything because nobody's going to learn the information.
Yeah.
I'm better at, you give me a short, like, write an essay on this topic and I'll analyze it and like put my philosophies in there.
Yeah, there's actual value in it.
Exactly. Because that's how I'm applying it to myself so I can now learn it instead of, what is the definition of this? I'm like, I'm sorry, but in the real world, I don't care about that definition because that definition means nothing.
Yeah, it's just gonna go in one year and out the other. That's what happened to like in most of my classes. Like I can't remember what the hell I learned in that introductory business course. But yeah, I mean, moving on. So like, there's that, and then grading bias. And I know you're you're pretty passionate about this too, right? Like so, like when you have a writing class, a business writing class, and 10 TAs. There's definitely going to be bias in that. Okay, I don't know if there's 10 TAs, but there are a lot of TAs, and it's like one person is going to grade a lot easier, and one person is going to grade a lot harder. And top onto that, this is a business course. Yeah, it's a writing course, but it's also a business course, and none of these TAs were business educated.
When you took it?
When I took it. Yeah, and before when I took it too.
Yeah, when I took it as well. Like it was all English people.
Yeah, so it was just like frustrating that like, bro, you can't teach me how to write like a business email because I don't think you've actually worked for a corporation based off of the credentials that you provided us early in the quarter. And I know how to write emails, and everyone writes emails differently for like, there's a different target audience, right? Like if you're writing something to your peer, you're going to be a little more casual. You're writing something to your, I don't know, CEO or manager or something, right? Like it's going to be way more formal. So there was too much structure. And it's just like it doesn't really emulate that business environment, you know what I mean?
No, I agree with that. And the reason I had a really big problem with especially that assignment, the email one, was like you said, there's thousands of ways to write an email. But the thing is, they were trying to teach you this formatting, which is fine. Like that's important to learn a professional format. A lot of students have never done an email in their life, like a professional one. So I mean, that was a good side of it. But the problem that I had with it was I've never spent more than 30 minutes on email in my life, and I spent like 35 minutes on that. And I got one of the highest grades in my section. It was at 80%. I was like, how do you get an 80% on an email? That makes no logical sense, especially because in like tell me that 20%, how do you write it better? And in the business world, like you said, if you're in a corporate, you end up writing about 100 emails a day. Yeah. If you're spending that much time per email, you're going to be the least productive person in that job, and you're probably going to get fired. So I think it's teaching the wrong perspective of how to write an email.
Right.
They should teach you how to curate an email based off an audience. So I think a better way of maybe approaching that entire assignment is they pick a random audience for every single student, and then you have to write an email to them.
To that audience.
Exactly. Because that's teaching the value of writing an email, not here's a structure, here's how you have to write this sentence and this sentence and this sentence, this sentence. Like, nobody cares.
It doesn't work like that.
When I read emails, I'm not spending my time to look at somebody's grammar.
Yeah.
Like, that's great. Yes, they should have good grammar.
I mean, the grammar matters, but
it matters to an extent, but I'm saying like that word choice compared to that word choice compared to having that sentence there, it doesn't mean anything.
Yeah, or he said hi instead of hello. Like, come on.
Yeah.
Chill.
Exactly.
Yeah, you don't want to like come out too like straight edge, you know, that kind of thing, because it's like people won't take you as seriously. You want to have a personality.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, so yeah, grading bias. And then some courses just felt like there's too much busy work, and that was probably just like the way that they were structured. Like the idea of it was good, so to like for a couple of our courses, we just had to write weekly papers on like a certain topic within the course, right?
Books,
yeah, articles and books. But the problem was that I can't remember how many words, but it was like 2 or 3, 4 pages.
2 pages.
2 pages.
3 pages for books, 2 pages for articles.
2 to 3 pages, single spaced, double sided, and that's just like way too much for like 1 week of writing. So I mean, if you've experienced those classes too, like what do you think about that?
I mean, my biggest thing is I like the idea of it, because what it is doing is you're reading a book and actually analyzing it.
Right.
The issue that I have with it is students don't take just one class. If it was just one class and you took that, that's actually going to teach you analysis, and that's going to teach you how to really deep dive into books and articles and make sure you really understand it and all this kind of stuff.
Sure.
But I think where the disconnect comes from is students, like for myself, I take 5 classes a quarter, which is also not smart, but taking multiple classes in a quarter, what that does is I have a certain time frame I can do everything.
Yeah.
If I don't have enough time to do that, I'm not going to put the effort that is necessary for me to get the value out of what I'm supposed to be doing. Like, I like the idea and concept, but in practice, it's not always going to be the most useful way of teaching somebody a value, or like, here's this book, what is the main things you're getting out of it? Because a lot of students, what they do is they just go to Spark Notes, I can tell, summarize it, and then just slap that on, and that's all they get. But then they're going to get a B.
Right. Yeah. That's the other thing. It's just like everyone knows that some of these classes are like pinned to a B, like a B average. So it's like they know that, like, oh, just put the minimal effort, you get a B. If you put some extra effort, you might get a B plus. You may get an A minus, and if you suck up to the professor, then yeah, you'll get an A.
That's also not 100% true, because if you do write a good enough analysis, you will get an A in those classes. Like that kind of disconnect also comes from this is the effort level.
Yeah, that's
because
right.
People have that perspective, like I'm going to B, so they never try to fight for that A.
Right.
And I think also some classes give out A's too easily. So it is kind of a mixture of both, because I think that some classes should be a little bit more critical about how you get an A, because some people don't even know anything of the concept, like the course concepts. Yeah. They get an A. I'm like, how?
No, yeah, that's fair. I mean, like, yeah, so some schools do have grade inflation. So in a sense, it is good that it is harder to get that A, because it puts more value in, like, you know, the course that you're taking. But yeah, I don't know. I think just the way it's set up, like, promoted too much laziness in that sense. But yeah, moving on. So this isn't a case for many people, not necessarily a lot of people, but lecturers who were, I guess, hired to teach a course a week or like last second, right before the course is supposed to start. So like my last quarter of school, I took a database management class. I cannot tell you one thing that I learned from database management, like, at all, because the guy was condescending. The guy didn't know how to teach. The guy praised himself. And I mean, when he started dropping knowledge on you that wasn't related to the class, I was engaged, because I was like, okay, this guy's kind of smart, but just like, I didn't learn anything because he didn't know how to teach. And he just read off of lecture slides. Honestly, like, I don't think he cared about the grades that he gave out. He kind of just gave everyone A's, to be honest. Actually, no, I didn't get an A in the class because of my exam grades, but like,
you still got
on
like
the projects.
But you still got a high, like, did you get like a high B at least?
I think I got a B plus.
Exactly, and that shows that you didn't take anything out of it. And
yeah,
that's kind of what I was talking about with the grades, because some people, like, realistically, like, how do you even get a B plus in a class if you don't understand anything? Yeah.
Yeah, I just like memorize stuff.
Yeah.
And then again, in one year, out the other. Did it again for the second midterm, and then tried to regurgitate all that information for the final. And then, yeah, I don't remember anything from the class, man. Like, it's sad. I don't know. Do you have any professors like that? Or lecturers?
I did have one experience like that, and it was actually a kind of everybody had a problem with it because it was a last second add-on for econ. It was a microeconomics class in the MBA program, and it was a last second add-on. It was a fill-in professor. The guy was a genius, don't get me wrong. Like he knew his stuff. He was really, really smart. But that was the problem. He was really, really, really smart. So he was teaching microeconomics to students that have never done economics in their life.
Right.
And he starts off very first class with log functions.
What?
With like econometrics theory. It went into like, I literally Google searched like some of the stuff he was teaching. It was like advanced philosophies in microeconomic theory or some kind of stuff like that. And I'm like, how is this guy teaching this to MBA students? Like, yes, we're MBA students. Of course, we're supposed to manage. We're supposed to be very educated. Right. But if you don't have the basis of economics to jump into that, you're not getting any value. Literally, the students in the class, I don't think they learned much because he didn't even start with supply and demand. He went straight into log functions. Yeah. If you go into econ and don't understand what a supply and demand is, you can't go into stuff like marginal utility, like the more difficult stuff, till you learn the baby steps.
Right.
And I think not only is it like the last second add-ons that's a problem, of course. And sometimes they have to do it because whatever circumstance, they do have to do it. So can't always get around that. But the professor needs to learn, like, understand and read the class.
Yeah.
If we don't understand what you're talking about, don't continue with it. Pace it down and then work with us. We'll give you feedback. We'll say, like, look, we don't understand any of this.
Yeah.
I was lucky enough that I had some background in econ, so I was able to pick it up. But most students in that class, I could just tell their eyes were wide open and they're just like, I don't know any of this.
Yeah, I'm dropping out.
Not even dropping out. They just like stopped attending class because why would they attend class? Right. There's no benefit in that. Right. And it was in MBA, we actually have lecture capture. That class was not in a room with lecture capture.
Oh no.
So even students, like, there's like, what is the point? Because we can't even like look at the slides or understand what problem sets he's going through, and he's going through this crazy calculus level stuff that most like students, like, they come MBA, usually these students come from like medical fields or engineering. Well, engineers should be able to do it, but certain fields have never seen this in their life before.
What were the averages on the exams?
Oh, they were like 40%, or like they were really, really low. But the thing though is like that's where curves come in, and that's like that's good and a bad thing in education systems. But like, for instance, classes that like everybody bombs, like obviously nobody really learned. No. Everybody fails a class. There's no way everybody learned.
And that should send the school a message. Yeah, like, that's not good.
Exactly.
You know? Yeah. Anyway, so the last con I have is, and this is something that I learned from studying abroad, and something I realized as soon as I came back from studying abroad, and I'm sure you did too, is a lack of passion from a majority of lecturers and professors. Because like I mentioned earlier, that like the professors and lecturers in Hong Kong were like very invested in what they were doing, whereas there's only a few that I witnessed here at UCR that like were really engaging and were very passionate, excited to teach. So yeah, I think that should also send a message to our school and other schools in general that like, you know, what's the point in having like people teach you when they're not invested into it themselves? Yeah,
I mean, that kind of falls once again, like, UC schools are research facilities.
Okay,
and the professors have to do research. So some of the professors are really, it's unfortunate, but they're not the best at teaching information. They're here to do their research, which comes first. But that being said, we're paying tuition. We're here for school. Exactly. We're here for a business school. If we are not engaged with the class and the professor can't read that we're not engaged with the class, we're not also learning. And that's the whole purpose of academia, is for us to learn. So I do agree that is a problem that needs to be addressed. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so that was the list of cons that I pointed out. Okay. Now, the pros. So we don't have to touch too much on this because it's pretty self-explanatory, but number one is case studies. I know like a lot of top tier schools incorporate case studies, but the number one thing about case studies is that like they're so practical. So I only experienced one class with case studies at UCR, and when I took that class, I was just like, why don't other classes have this? Right? Like, why am I writing long ass papers when I could be learning about it actually happening in companies? And the biggest thing, which I'll go into later, is like, it really teaches you how to think and really like
sets you up for the real world, I'd say.
I mean, going off of that, I understand why they don't have too many case studies in undergrad. It's because you have to have a very good theoretical background before you need to apply it, because case studies are all about application of the theory you learn in classrooms.
Right.
I agree in upper division, like especially your fourth year.
Yeah.
It's a disservice to students not teaching them how to do a case study because you don't know how to analyze a problem in a company and find a solution.
Yeah.
Where my issue with case studies comes in is depending on what subject it is, sometimes it's pushed so far back that it doesn't create value for a student. So for instance, if I'm doing digital marketing and talking about case studies from 2012, the digital sphere has changed different that what I'm learning from 2012, even if I found the solution to that problem, the problems that exist now, that is irrelevant. Technology moves too fast. So I'm for case studies, but I'm also somewhat against it because it's looking into the past, not the future.
Okay. Yeah.
But balancing that off, I still think the application side is what students in business really, really need.
Yeah, just in general, we need more. Okay, yeah. So that, and then I'd say group projects with incentives. So actually, I'm realizing as I'm reading this pros list that there's also a cons list, because these pros are things that I like noticed like once or twice out of like.
They're opportunities, I would say. I wouldn't say that they're necessarily like even the cons as well.
Yeah.
I think all of this is like an opportunity for universities.
That's a much better way of looking at it. But yeah, like out of the like, I don't know, 46, 50 classes I took, only like 2 or 3 had projects that had practical value and which put you in a real life situation. They weren't like kind of just made up situations, which I mean to some extent is fine depending on the course. But like for example, one of the courses I took put us in a group project which was defined as like a consulting project, which excited me because I mean I was about to start working at Deloitte too, so it was more of a consulting thing. And so that excited me, but what else excited me was that it was more of a competitive environment, but in a good way. So it was like you're not kind of just doing this for yourself, but it's like you're more motivated by like, oh, I want to come up with the best solution because I really care about the school. And the other thing is that with the competition came incentives. So like I just said, like you're doing better for the school. So this project involved the business school as a whole. So it was a big deal. And it was the first time this professor was new to the university. This is the first time that I had seen, and many other people had seen, like a project that directly involved the school, and which like all the projects which would go into actually providing actual legitimate benefit, and that benefit has been seen. So like we had to, I think we had to come up with like a program, like a experiential learning, something like that.
Yeah, experiential learning strategy kind of for this university.
Yeah, so that was exciting because it was like, 1, I'm passionate about helping the school out. 2, it was fun. 3, I got to do it with my friends. 4, it was well guided, well taught. And now, I mean, my team didn't win, but like everyone's ideas went into like a program now called R Lead or something like that. So which incentivizes a lot of students to gain more practical value outside of the classroom. So it's like a win-win situation for everyone. It was pretty fun. It was awesome. Another course taught by the same professor, another one of his projects, it was a different kind of incentive where like it incentivizes you to actually work hard because there was firing involved. So the team was allowed to fire one of their members if like they weren't, you know, participating, that kind of thing. And like everyone was ranked like consistently throughout the course. So no, it was a lot, but like, and there was a lot of work in that class, but I think just schools need more of that. Just in general,
that's real world application. Like,
yeah, absolutely. Like you can actually get fired.
Exactly. That's how the real world works. Like if you're not performing, you're not doing your job, and you're not creating value for a corporate company, as much as you might hate it, you're going to get fired. Like that's just how the real world works. So I think those are both super, super valuable. Yeah.
So I mean, in general, that was the end of like the opportunities list, or I guess continuing it now in the sense like what I want to see and what other people want to see as like, or what would be our ideal college curriculum. Right? So I'm gonna run through this list really quick, and then we can talk about it. So again, case studies. Like I'm just gonna keep bringing that up. Like, yeah, we need more of that. And we touched a lot about that already, and we've talked about this too. But like less memorizing and more applying and doing. So essentially, learn by doing. And I think everyone's different. Fine. maybe memorizing is really going to help some people, but I feel like, I mean, you're shaking your head, but I feel like some people like benefit from
True,
that.
yeah.
Like a minority. Most people will learn by doing. So if we're actually like, instead of writing essays and stuff and actually like working with other companies, doing just like the class that I was just talking about, where we're working with organizations on campus, the school as a whole, or other companies, and like I mean, this wasn't necessarily a class, but like you led a consulting program working with what was
BCRE, the engineers.
Yeah, exactly. So that next, more real life scenarios and lecture content. Did we touch about that already? Like incorporating books into.
No, we didn't.
Yeah. So this one is interesting because in one of the courses I took, it was conflict and cooperation in groups, and it was led by one of the professors I mentioned who like incorporated these great projects. But I think the one thing about this class for me, I mean, it might not have been the same thing for everyone, but like I had already done internships, so a lot of it wasn't new material because it was theory. And it was like that didn't really connect with me, and I understood it from a more practical point of view. May have helped others, I'm not sure, but I feel like I think a lot of my peers felt the same way, where there was too much theory and less practical value. So the point I'm trying to make is that I would have liked to see more, I guess, books involved, like actually reading passages of legit books. So like one that I happened to be reading while I was taking this course, as I was commuting back and forth from home and school. It was an audiobook, I was listening to an audiobook. It was called Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink and Leif Babin. These two guys were in the Navy SEALs. They're very high-ranking people, and so after their time in the Navy SEALs, they opened their management consulting firm. So this book was awesome because it taught a lot about leadership, taught a lot about cooperation and conflict. So it was very relevant to the class I was taking, which I didn't expect, or I didn't realize that's what I was getting into. And it was cool because they talked first about their experiences in the Navy SEALs, which may not necessarily tie into, your and my daily life, but it also is very relevant at the same time, just taking the examples that they had and applying it to yourself. But even better, they tied it into their business experience, being management consultants. So they're able to show like real life examples that they experience, and they're teaching you, the reader, like the listener, like, this is a really good way to go about it. And I'm pretty sure they even dropped one or two names of the theories that I was learning in class, but they provided
examples,
like legit examples, and walked through the whole thing. So it was funny. It was cool that I was reading that book and taking that class at the same time, because that made me realize that, like, if we had more books, more practical things like this, and less theory, it would be way more relevant to what we're learning.
Yeah, I mean, like, that kind of goes into like some of the stuff we even do for our company comes from the book Contagious.
Right.
And like, from that book, I didn't see the value obviously when I read it back then.
Yeah.
I now see the value of it because I understand how those philosophies in that book relate to viralization of marketing material.
Yeah.
And that also goes into another class that I'm currently kind of the reader/TA for, and that one has 3 books about entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
And I think students will learn a lot from other people's experiences in entrepreneurship and seeing examples, and like exactly what you brought up.
Yeah.
Instead of just here's theory on entrepreneurship, like you can't learn entrepreneurship in theory.
Yeah.
You got to practice it and see it and actually try it yourself. So I do agree that like, not textbooks.
Yeah.
That's great. That's academia. Some classes need it. So like supply chain, you're going to need to read a textbook. That's great. But a lot of marketing classes, IS classes, negotiations classes, those should have more physical books written by outside sources and then quoted back into the text.
Yeah. Actually, I should add on though, that class that I brought up did involve a lot of practical things. Like we had our teams and we did a lot of fun activities in the class, and so it brought those theories to life, but at the same time, I mean, those examples were good. They gave more perspective to it, but at the same time, they weren't like showing it in the real world.
Yeah.
So it was like, okay, fun, great use of class. I'm actually like, from the outside, it was somebody who didn't understand the context and be like, what the hell are you guys doing? You're playing games in class. But no, it was a cool way of approaching it. But yeah, you get the point.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. Okay.
So what else in your curriculum?
So more real life scenarios, which is what we went into. We talked about projects with practical value, And then we touched upon this already a little bit, but replacing unnecessary courses, and that just goes down to the design of like the program. So like some schools like ours have a pre-business program, which we talked about this already, right? Yeah. So now, luckily, I mean, unfortunately for us, like it hasn't changed yet, but it's changing in a couple of years, 4 years or something.
I think faster than that actually.
Yeah. So it's going to be designed in a way where students are taking business course from
The start.
So like for me, I had to take, I mean, yes, the way things are set up, students will probably still have to take physical science courses and stuff like that. But
that's U.S. education, though. Like, you're not going to get around that.
That sucks. But, at the same time, it was like I had my entomology grade defining my GPA for that quarter. And that was just so disheartening,
That doesn't make sense.
It's like, what the hell am I doing with my life right now? Like, I don't know if I want to do marketing or finance. I mean, obviously, I learned I don't want to do finance, but like, you have this question in your head, like, what am I supposed to do with myself? I'm not taking any business courses right now, and I'm taking a class on history, taking a class on bugs, and I'm taking a class on creative writing. Okay, creative writing was helpful, but like,
Yeah, that's just one class out of the three that you just mentioned. So
yeah, exactly. So
it's not going to give you that same value. No, I agree with that. I think not only just not removing, like, you don't have to remove every class, but updating it. So I know that's one big thing. It's not just at UCR, it's across the entire world. For instance, information systems, it's very, very new in the business. Like, it's not new in the business, like it's been like 1990s of it's existed in academia, but the issue is information systems is the most technical business thing you can do,
right?
And the issue is what they teach in classes is so outdated,
dude. Like, I'm an IS concentration,
and you feel like a marketing guy.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I can't tell you too much about what I learned as an information systems person, because really, like, the courses I had were more marketing, entrepreneurship oriented, which I loved, actually. Like, it was fun because that's more of who I am. Obviously, I wanted more of that technical background to diversify my skills, but like, I can't.
Yeah, I mean, it's shifting the right way, and I think universities all over the world are kind of figuring that out. That's why they're adding like these like masters in digital, like literally just digital, or IS and MIS and all these kinds of things. Right. The reasoning for that is they realize that that's where everything's going. Technology, you got to learn it. But that comes through academia bureaucracy. It takes like 2 years to get a class approved. In that 2-year time frame, technology swung like 4 times at least. 6 months, there's a new technology out. What we know now about blockchain in 2 years, if it became a class, is irrelevant. I am happy right now that, especially at UCR, we are updating the classes very, very quickly. So we're doing classes in Python now, which is a technical skill every business, not even just IS people, like business students, you need to understand that.
Yeah, I missed out on that.
Exactly. Python, understanding R Studio, like statistical languages. Getting away from some outdated stuff. Like SQL is great in database, but SQL itself, not a lot of companies use it. They use NoSQL and all these other new languages.
Speaking of SQL, I didn't learn anything about SQL in my database class, even though we went over it, but you figure out the loopholes.
Yeah. So I mean, that kind of goes what I'm talking about, that not only just eliminating, eliminating is kind of a harsh way of saying it. I think more updating and making sure that the curriculum is going as fast as the real world market is, the commercial markets are. Yeah. Because the whole point of a business school, prepare you for the business world. I think UCR itself is going in the right direction. I think UCR, I personally love the administration of the UCR School of Business. The reasoning is that the professors, the dean, the faculty, everybody listens to students. So what we're even talking about right now, they're actively trying to change it. Yeah. The issue is that they just can't change it fast enough, and that's where bureaucracy comes in. And unfortunately, that's just how it is. But at the same time, I'm happy to see the changes that are happening, because honestly, 5 years down the line, I can see UCR as one of the best business schools. So yeah, it's very interesting to see what's going to happen with that.
Yeah, I'm totally excited for that. But yeah, that basically rounds out everything I wanted to talk about in this article. So I'm glad we were able to have a discussion about that, and hope people are taking note too, because I think as alumni, we were able to have a pretty rounded out perspective. When you're younger and you're in your sophomore year, you can only say so much, but once you start working and stuff, you realize like the impact that school has had on you.
Yeah, and I think just to kind of close out this conversation, I think it's very, very important, no matter what your background is and all that kind of stuff. Once you graduate as alumni,
Yeah.
give back to the school, give your feedback, try to develop the school. You're leaving a legacy behind. I really despise when students are just talking crap about a university and not doing anything about it.
Exactly.
Or they talk crap about a degree and not doing anything about it. If you're in something, make the most of it. Both of us, a lot of people I know as well, they're actively trying to, you know, talk to the dean, talk to professors. Oh, we should do this, this, and this. Not everything can be done, but if you don't speak out, you complaining does nothing. So I think that's kind of the where I want to end this is, if you are complaining about your education, do something about it. And once you're an alumni, give back. Make the school your alma mater, make it better.
I agree.
All right. Is there any final comments you want to end this on, or final piece of advice, whether it be around education or what last thoughts on it?
I think just what you said was like, you hit the nail on the head.
Okay.
I would have said like pretty much the same thing, you know, give back, be involved, don't complain. I complained a lot in my life, so I think I can say that because I've learned from it. The biggest thing in general is like, you know, take those failures, because take risks in school, in education, because in the end it's going to pay off, because you'll learn from it if you're willing to learn from it. Like, yeah, you mess up one time, you don't get an interview or something, or like your interview doesn't lead you to a job, you know, you'll be disheartened for a day and then move on and learn what you did wrong. And so that, I think, principle applies to everything. Education, but like everything in life.
I think we'll just end it there. I think this was a good conversation on the group.
Absolutely.
Right there.